So as K2 teachers, we sometimes find ourselves in professional development with this kind of dialogue in our heads. Yeah, that's great, but what am I supposed to do with a 5-year-old in this tool, right? Is this your life? Or sometimes they'll be talking to you, want, 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 and all you can think of, and then they're crawling around on the floor, and then they don't know how to read. These are all the considerations we have as teachers of little learners. There's so much more. There's the social emotional development we're considering. There's the fine motor development we're still considering. They don't have as much control of their tiny little fingers. We have non-readers. So we have all these things that say select, push, open, and they don't always have that vocabulary. So when I started presenting this session, it was with us in mind, right? I spent my whole career in the K2 world, and I know it, I've lived it. So my goal today is to share some ideas, tips, and tricks about introducing the Google Suite, especially for little learners. So I'm going to talk about my friend Jared here. And Jared was a kid, you've probably met him. He struggled a little bit with motivation. And getting Jared to do anything was pulling teeth. And it wasn't always Jared's fault. He had a lot going on, and school wasn't his first priority in his mind. Put a paper on Jared's desk, he'd get a letter or two written, I'd walk away. Come back 2 minutes later, Jared, where's your paper? And it's crumpled up in the back of the desk. Have you met him? You know this kid?
Yes.
Right? Sentences, anything, asking Jared to finish something was such a challenge. So imagine my joy one day. We're working on making an informational paragraph, and we're using these sentence strips. And every time Jared finished a sentence, I'd tape it down. And then we used another strip, and I tape it down. Have you met this kid? Yeah. So we've got 6 complete sentences about a bat. And I'm like, okay, whew. Jared, I'd like you to go over to your Chromebook and type these sentences in. If you get all your sentences typed up, I'll let you put in a picture. Not that big of a deal technologically, but to this kid who struggled with motivation, who didn't complete anything, next thing you knew, Jared's got his sentences typed into the Chromebook. And I think, we've got something going here. So I said, Jared, I went into your document about bats. I love it. I added a little bit of feedback. I used the comment tool in Google Docs, and I told you how you can make it a little better. Notice on the side I said punctuation, possessive noun. Now I could have said put an apostrophe here, but make sure we reinforce that the academic vocabulary. I said, Jared, if you go fix your mistakes, I'll let you change the font. Now Jared, again, he struggles with motivation. He struggles with getting anything done. But I found a little spark in Jared with this tool. So you guys know about editing in the primary classroom anyways. Okay, kids, they write their letters, they write their sentences, they get to the end, they put the last period, they hand it to you, they're done with it. And so you come back and say, sweetheart, let's take a look at this. Could we take a look at this word? Is that spelled right? And so you look around, you have to find the pencil that still has an eraser. And here it comes. They're coming to the paper. What's going to happen right now? Right? So editing, fixing our writing in the primary grades is so challenging. But look what Jared did. He was able to go into his Google Doc and edit his own work. So sometimes it's not just about the tool, but it's about motivating. That's not where Jared's story ends, though, because a couple days later he comes to me and he says, Mrs. Stewart, look what I made in my Google account. And I looked at this thing and I'm like, what's this Google Drawings thing? I've never even used it. And he says, my brother helped me make this about a bat. Wow. Does Jared understand the anatomy of a bat? For sure. Sometimes our kids just need a different tool to show us what they know. If we put these tools in their hands, we give them access to modern learning situations, it's amazing what they'll create, right? Our littlest learners can do so much. So that's what we're here to talk about today, what our littlest learners can do in the Google Suite. Speaking of what they can do.
Right here. So to recap, start reading. He started a screencast. You remember how to stop recording? Press the square, yeah. Let's see the video you need. Let's see. Very cool. So there's the recording of you giving it a little. Let's see if you can hear it. Let's unplug it so we can hear it.
Tap, tap, tap. A ant but on a heart.
You made a screencast all by your side. Awesome job. High five. Thank you. Go ahead and back to your turn.
So to recap the beginning, he opens his Google Classroom, he starts a recording tool, and then he records himself reading. What did you notice? What do you wonder? What did you notice? What do you wonder? And don't leave me hanging here. Yes?
It's a touch screen.
It's a touch screen.
Ours are not necessarily touch screen. Is this easy to do on the keyboard?
They manipulate the mouse on the touchpad like they would any other thing.
Or a real mouse?
Yeah, or a real mouse.
Oh, a real mouse. Okay.
What else do you notice?
His smile at the end.
Oh yeah, he was so proud of himself. Right? What else do you notice?
So I know nothing about any of this, so they have their own Google Classroom account.
They have their own Google account.
How do they get to it on their own?
So what you notice, he walked up to the computer, he clicked on the colorful circle on the Google Chrome wheel. We have a bookmark to Google Classroom, and they're trained. This is, by the way, he's an October kindergartner. And you know the difference. If you're a kindergarten teacher, the kindergartner in October and the kindergartner in May, they're two different kids. October kindergartner. Clicked on the colorful circle, Google Chrome, clicked on our classroom bookmark. He saw the book there, tapped it. They've been trained. We've modeled this up in the whole class a million times. He turns on his recording tool, reads his book, turns off the recording tool. So we'll talk about some of the tools that actually came there, but he did it by himself. He did it by himself. So
Very confident.
very confident. This was his second time, by the way. Again, he'd seen it 3 or 4 whole class, his second time on his own. What else do you notice? What do you wonder? So, as a teacher, why do you want this recording? Why does this recording help you? What can you do with that? Yeah.
Well, the one thing I'm thinking of is, what's his reading level? You know, I mean, is he lower? So is he getting access to words that and being able to read because he's motivated to read out loud, where sitting at a desk in front of a book, he's not going to read at all. Right. He's not going to progress at all. So I'm seeing this as a tool to motivate students to actually get sick and hear their own voices.
Why else? Running records. Let's talk about that. I'm assessing a kindergartner in reading. Okay, here, come on, sweetheart. Let's read this book. Hold on, honey. I gotta help. What did you just say? Just a second, sweetheart. Are you bleeding? Right? No. This is what assessing's like in the primary class, and I can't rewind my kid when I'm taking my running records. But if I have a recording, I can do some thorough error analysis of his reading. If you were watching carefully, he was actually calling out words that weren't on that page. He said an ant went on the pot, and that word, he just inserted it. So this was some text he'd had memorized. So I can really take a deep look at his errors, rewind him, and now I can teach him more effectively because I've had a chance to look at that. Yes?
So he's in classroom, but what is he actually on now? Like, what has he accessed?
Oh, so
How did you create?
we'll get there a little bit later, but it's an extension called Screencastify. Okay. So why else? So I can use this for assessment. He's proud of it. What else can I do with this as a teacher?
Parent conferences.
Show it to parents, right? Having this digital evidence is so powerful. So portfolio, all of the things. What can our littlest learners do? They can do so much. We just have to put the tools in their hands. So a little bit about me. My name is Susan Stewart. I'm an instructional technology coach from the Fresno area. I have really cute kids all together. Let's go. Aww. And there's a little bit more about me. If you hear something you like, please tweet about it. If you create something, share it, tweet about it, and make sure you use some of those hashtags. I am Tech Coach Susan. Take a look at that for just a second. So I just want to thank you for being here because you are not those people, right? You're not the people too busy to learn something new or try something new. You're here on a Saturday because you want tools to improve. Whew, okay, now we're really going to get started. I'm done telling stories. Just kidding, I'll tell stories for the next 40 minutes. Google Classroom. That was the first tool we mentioned. Google Classroom is the core of the Google Suite, in my opinion. It is, for our little learners, that delivery point. It's where they can access things. It is home base, mission control, all of the things. I promise I can't teach you how to use Google Classroom in the next 36 minutes, but these are all amazing resources to come back to. If you decide, oh, Google Classroom is something I want to look into a little bit more later, find another session about Google Classroom or come back. These are all amazing tutorials that will get you more information. But what I want to show you is why. Why does Google Classroom matter in the primary class? Starting with this. Google Classroom gets our kids where they want to go. Putting small children on the internet is terrifying, right? Next thing you know, they click on this, they click on this, click on this. Something simple as Starfall. Who doesn't love Starfall, right? But look how much is going on that page already. We're learning words, and I really want them to play the game. Where do they have to go? First, we got to get to starfall.com. Then I have to know to click on Learn to Read, and then I have, look, how do I know which one's the game? Your 5-year-olds are already lost. Your 7-year-olds have already found too many extra things they shouldn't be clicking on. So why does Google Classroom matter? Well, Google Classroom lets me take them straight to the game I want to get them to. I post it to Classroom, that one-stop shop mission control. Click on the one on top, and it'll take them directly to the resource where I'd like them to be. Why does Google Classroom matter? YouTube. There are amazing resources on YouTube. It's fabulous. I'm going to be talking about YouTube for an entire hour later today. But it's scary. I want to send them to a video about words. We're learning about words, and I want my Google Classroom to be just about my teaching. So I send them to Google Classroom, say to watch a video about hibernating animals. And then a couple seconds later, like they're watching something about snowmen. And next thing you know, like your whole class of first graders is singing Let It Go, right? Because that's what happens in YouTube. There's so many distractions. It's so easy to get lost. So I'm going to give you a little amazing present right now called viewpure.com. And it's a way to combine Google Classroom and this other resource to clean up the YouTube problem. Again, we're going to talk about this for a whole hour in a session later. I'm not advertising for myself, but again. In ViewPure, it takes this great thing, but what do you see? What's going on here? Lots of good choices. We really just want to watch this one video. So what if I could take this and make it look like that? Yes, this is what you want. So great resource called ViewPure. If I pair Google Classroom, I know we're going to do some app smashing right now, YouTube and ViewPure, and I post them, then this is what my kiddos can get. I've already won, right? I can get my kids directly to their resources. Again, viewpure.com, it takes this to this. And if you can copy and paste, you can figure this one out. We'll talk more of it later. Why else? Why else does Google Classroom matter? I'm going to introduce you to Gunner right now. You ready to meet Gunner? Gunner is a TK kiddo. Say hi, Gunner. And Gunner in the beginning didn't know how to type his name. So he would just take a selfie and put it on the front page of his slide deck. Okay. He could figure out selfies, couldn't type his name. So Gunner and TK was learning about Little Red Riding Hood. And so in this particular activity, the TK teacher pushes this into Google Classroom. They watch a quick video about Little Red Riding Hood. Notice how this is embedded right inside the slide. He's not at YouTube. Ooh, another little trick. Isn't that handy? Google Classroom lets us make that happen. Now, he uses his very best TK inventive spelling, and he names the characters. And then he went and drags and dropped this, puts the story in order, right? Why do we need Google Classroom? To give students access to these tools. This isn't super highly creative. There isn't a ton of rigor here. It is completely academic. We teach beginning, middle, end. It's part of our standards all the way through. But there's something else we're teaching Gunner when we give him access to the tools like this. If you've ever watched a kindergartner, a first grader, or second grader trying to navigate a touchpad, oh my goodness, they're grinding their little finger in and they get so frustrated. An activity like this lets us teach them to click and drag, Because in the primary grades, it's all about setting foundations, right? We teach phonics, phonemic awareness, letters, sounds, so that they can learn to read, and they can read to learn, and they become lifelong lovers of literacy, right? We set the foundations. So when we talk about math, we teach number sense, counting, cardinality. We teach them to add, so they can learn to multiply, so they can apply mathematics in real-life situations. What foundations do we set when it comes to learning with modern tools in the primary grades? What foundations can we set? We can teach them to click and drag. If we can teach them to click and drag in kindergarten, it's gonna, your third grade teachers, ooh, they're gonna love you, right? Little things like that. So it's academic, again, not highly creative, but it's opportunities to build some of those foundational technology skills like click and drag. Open a file, close a file. Classroom allows all of this to happen. Why else do we want Classroom? I'll show you. Blended learning, lessons on 10s and 1s. If you know the idea of blended learning, it's the idea of what I was mentioning earlier. I want what we're doing on technology to reinforce and support what we're doing in class. If we're learning words in our phonics program, I want to make sure that they have opportunities to practice, extend, continue, so we have that merger of digital learning and traditional learning all kind of going together. It's not reading time and computer time, it's learning time. So I could take something like a lesson in 10s and 1s that I'm doing in my math program and let students extend it here. Now, I'll give you a little present. If you click on any of these, a little window will pop up. It says, would you like to make a copy of this? Say yes, and it's yours, you're welcome. But I'm gonna open up this one here about insect research. And this was sparked by something my daughter brought home. And I don't have somewhere to write, so I'm gonna just have you visualize this. There's a white piece of paper, and on it is this line art praying mantis. Just a little, and it's got a smiley face, it's super cute. And there's 4 little words that she's cut off the bottom and pasted to label the praying mantis. You've seen that worksheet, you probably have a couple of them. We're labeling the parts of an insect, totally acceptable activity, but I think that little smiley face on the praying mantis, and I think we're a one-to-one Chromebook district. We can do better than this. So I just asked, what do you wonder about this praying mantis? And then they watched a little video about the praying mantis. And there's some links to some additional stuff about the praying mantis, right? This is something they can just work on in their own time. Oh, look.
This is click and drag.
It can be click and drag. In this particular one, they click and type. But then what are we teaching them? The idea of putting a cursor inside a box in order to make text, they have to be shown. They have to be taught. So these opportunities, we have to do stuff like this. So why do we need Google Classroom? Well, we can give our students access to all of these amazing learning opportunities. Last one, why do we need Google Classroom? Talking about vocabulary in 2nd grade. What do vocabulary tasks look like in your classroom? How do we teach vocabulary? What does a task look like? What are kids doing? Mm-hmm.
We have vocabulary cards and we tell them what they are, and wonders have this define example and then ask them a question, and it's really dry and boring.
Yeah, okay. I remember the first probably 12 years in 2nd grade, vocabulary looked like this. Okay, well for the first, isn't it a fun game? It's awesome. It's a great one. I'm glad you're clicking. Please play. Please play. It was like this. You got a word, and there were some lines after it. What would you do on the lines? Copy the definition. What about Google Classroom? And we could put it on a slide. The word's on a slide. And they're going to type the definition. Okay, if they went and copied it off a website, I'm totally good with that. They inserted an image about it. And now this last one, instead of writing a sentence with the word in it, they had to create a caption that used the word in context to support the image, right? So now we have those informational text skills, or informational text features that we're including there. We just shifted the task. It's still just vocabulary, but what are we teaching them? We're teaching them text on a slide. We're giving them access to fun little games to play. Remember the reinforcement. Every time a website goes bling, bling, bling at me, I'm excited. And then, again, inserting an image to support my message. There's a standard about that. Using a caption. So here's one on 3rd grade, just the idea of it all can come together with close reading, everything. Right? They can do this, and it can be about education, not just pushing buttons on computers. So I'm going to skip a couple slides, and I'm going to go straight on over to this hidden gem in the Google Suite. So pardon me for going to quick switch. But if you can find your way about 5 or 6 slides up, this one called Google MyMaps. If you click on the picture of that map, physically click on it, it should pop you open to another place. Now, the link might come up down underneath it. So if you click on that map, it should take you to something that looks like this. So if you get, I'll give you just a second. And this is a Google My Map. Has anyone had a chance to play with MyMaps in the classroom? Oh man, oh man. So our little learners don't know much beyond their own neighborhood, their school. They have no concept of what the world is. You know, where do you live? I live in Fresno. What state do you live in? I live in Fresno, right? What country do you live in? California? They don't quite have that concept of the world beyond themselves. And if we want to start developing these little digital citizens, these little global citizens, we can start in the primary grades by giving them the foundations of geographic awareness. But it can be more than that. We started this particular map. This is our community. And if you click on each of these, for example, I'll go click on the school. And it says, this is Marshall School. Our principal is Mrs. Denton. We have a fun library and a cool playground. Mr. Roy is our custodian. I can click on another place and it says, this is Fowler Football Field where we watch my brother play football. There's one down over here. It's shaped like a coffee cup and it says, this is where our teacher goes to get coffee every day. I like to eat, right? So we start with our community. But then what? What can we do? What if we're reading this particular book? In this story, How to Make an Apple Pie and See the World, the main character goes round and round the world gathering ingredients to make her apple pie. She goes to Vermont to get her apples. She goes to Jamaica to collect her sugar cane, right? If you're reading a text to your young learners and you talk about going to Vermont to get apples, that might as well be Taiwan to them, right? They don't have that concept. So we can retell our literature. We can show our stories visually through this. And they start listening for places. They start listening for geography in the text. For example, we read an autobiography or a biography about Barack Obama. And we can talk about the important places in his life. We put a pin in Hawaii, where he was born. Now, some people might say that's Kenya, but that's all on you. We put a pin in Chicago, where he was a senator. We put a pin in Washington, D.C., where he was president, right? We retell someone's life using this. How many places do you go in your classroom through books, through text? Lots and lots. And we say them as words, but do they have a visual concept of what that means? I had a first grade class last year who on the very first day of school, they did something kind of like that in my community. They put a pin on the map. And the next time they read a text that took them somewhere, they just dropped a pin on the map and they put the title of the book. And the next time they read about a person and where they were, they dropped a pin on the map. And it got to the point where the kids were holding that teacher accountable because it's really easy for me as a teacher to be like, oh yeah, I'll get that later. There's a place, go put it on our map. Would you believe that by the end of the year, those little first graders in rural Fresno, California, visited 86 places in the world? Right? What foundations are we setting? If you haven't had a chance to learn about MyMaps, I think there's another session today specifically on that. Please go, it'll be amazing. But these are resources you can access later. Remember, I can't teach you how to use MyMaps right now. That's not what we're here to do. I just want to give you an idea. What do these tools look like in the primary grades? What does Classroom look like? What does MyMaps look like? What can our little learners gain from that? You think it's cool? Tweet about it. Let's talk about docs. I shared Jared's doc in the very beginning, right? And we know that's the easy one. That's where they go and they type words. But what else can docs be? In this particular lesson, a second grade student had written this paper in February. It's Valentine's Day. He wrote it in February. And he wrote about his family and who he loves. And in the first draft, he goes around and he says, we celebrate the people we love. I love my family. I love my family because I love, I love, I love. It's a great paper. It's Valentine's Day. But now 4 months later, we do a lesson on shades of meaning, using shades of meaning among closely related words, right? It's a standard. And we talk about how words like mad, angry, and furious, they're synonyms, but furious is a stronger word. It has a different shade of meaning. So again, we write this paper in February, and now come May, we're talking about shades of meaning in just a lesson, a language lesson. And I think, I'm going to go have them apply this in some of their own writing. And I tiptoe back in Google Drive to his February writing. Now, if I'm not using Google Docs, where's the student's writing from February? It might be stapled up there in the corner in the room. It might be crumpled up in the back. It might be home. Right. But I wanted him to apply this language standard, shades of meaning among closely related word, in his own work. So I left him some feedback using the comment feature, and they like when you comment to them in Google Docs. They're like, hey, Mrs. Stewart, did you text me? And I said, Arush, you used the word love over 10 times. Is there a tool you can use to find synonyms or stronger words to replace it? And he told me he went to the kids' wordsmith thesaurus, and he found admire and adore. So instead of it being, I love my family, I love my mom, I love God, I love my dogs, it's, I adore my family, I admire God. Right? Wow. A second grader applying a language standard to truly revise his own work. Right? What does Google Docs enable us to do? Hold on to some of their samples so they can apply some of these language standards authentically. It's just Google Docs. Editing, revisions, becoming better readers and writers, right? And then getting started, I know my daughter, my middle child, started kindergarten this last month. And people think, oh, you're the tech girl, your kids are going to be amazing at technology. No, that's not something we do at home. So we get over to the computers, and the kindergarten teacher's noticing, like, they don't even know how to use the delete key. They don't know that if they type something wrong, there's a magical key over there that will take it backwards. They don't know to move a cursor around a page, how to go find the cursor in the middle of the text. So her kindergarten teacher, bless her, she's amazing, and I think she might have a little bit of she might be a little bit worried about having the tech coach daughter in her class, and so she might be up in her game just a little bit, but hey, that's cool. So she created this activity on the third day of school, where the kindergartners had to go into classroom, open the Google Doc, and if you click this, it's yours. It'll open a copy, you can have it. I mean, you just change it to whatever letter. So they had to go in, they had to move the cursor to the L, hit the backspace key. Find another L, that's letter ID. First couple weeks of kindergarten, we're doing letter ID. Find the L, delete it. Find the letter ID, delete it. Simple, keep it simple. We're not talking rocket science in the beginning of kindergarten. We're not doing authentic revisions of work in kindergarten, but we have to teach them those foundational basic skills. They get some keyboarding experience, they get that electronic feedback. I also like things like this. This is simple. Later in kindergarten, we're going to start typing our sight words. They're learning the keyboard, they're finding their way around. Something like this in a doc, it's a writing response. But when I'm a little learner, if I get just a blank piece of paper in a doc, it can be overwhelming to me. Simply by changing the background color and providing this box, you know where you're supposed to type, right? It kind of focuses. By using color, it makes it a little bit more interesting, gets them that experience, lots of ways to just get some basics in there, right? If you have iPads, there's some cool annotating you can do. But Docs is a great place to start. But there's so many more Google tools we can use, such as this one. Here we go. Ready to move on? Probably not, but we are. Let's talk about forms. Has anyone filled out a Google form? All of us. What can we do with forms and little learners? Let's see. Kids like to talk about themselves. They like to write about themselves. They like to tell about themselves. I could have you take this quick survey, but we won't. But it's pretty simple. You click on the link. If I'm a Google Classroom user, I just push it to my classroom and the kids click on the link and it says, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? And now that Google Forms lets me put pictures in as my answer choices, I don't even have to be a reader to be able to pick which one I like. So kids come in. I have a kindergarten teacher who has one iPad. She has Chromebooks for everybody, but she has one iPad that she sets at the end of her cubbies. And this is probably a common routine in your kindergarten class. Like, kids walk in, they take off their backpack, they stick it in the cubby, they go over to the chart to mark if they have hot lunch or cold lunch, they walk over to the iPad and they vote on their question of the day, and then they go sit on the carpet to start their day. Similar routines in many kindergarten classrooms, minus the iPad thing. What happens though, as soon as the kids have made their vote for the day, they get to sit down and have a number talk, data chat, about something they voted on. They're so into this because they helped create that data. They want to see which one won. And I don't know why people constantly vote for mint chip ice cream, because I think it's the most vile thing in the universe, but it's a really popular one. But look at this. From that form, I can get instant thing, and we can have maybe, do you have any brothers and sisters? There's the beginning of a conversation, maybe a pre-connection, every day. What's your favorite color? Just voting, so we can say, oh, look, 11 kids voted for this and 10 kids voted for this. That's only 21 students. Is someone missing today? Those conversations we can have. Oh, we need one more to get to 22. Oh, look, it's even 10 and 10. Just the numbers we can talk. The ability to do image, if I'm an EL, if I'm a non-reader, those pictures make it super easy to cast my vote. I can vote about my favorite book. I can create this. This is a second grade generated Google form. Jorge made this form himself. Everybody had to devise a question, or compose a question, and they had to think about something that mattered to them. Some said, what's your favorite Pokemon? Some said, what's your favorite cereal? Jorge said, who's your favorite football team? Now, in his first iteration of this, Jorge just had a text box where his friends typed in their answer. And when we went to look at the data, it was a hot mess, because his friends couldn't spell Raiders. And so they were like, Raiders showed up like 7 different times, spelled differently. So we did it again, and we limited the answer choices. And they just clicked on one. And then he was able to make this bar graph himself from data he collected. Every student could go in and look at their own data, compare it, look at, oh, this is really cool. Jorge created this form. So forms can be really powerful in the primary grades. And what's nice about forms, if you're at that point where you're just getting started and maybe your kids don't have accounts, or maybe you're a little bit afraid of giving kids accounts because it's a lot of work to get them logged in, forms don't require logins. Like, they can just go on a form without logging in. It's a good starting place to give them some of those basic foundations in selecting a button, turning it in, choosing something. Good starting place. I love this about forms. I can embed my videos here. Remember earlier I talked about YouTube distractions. This is a YouTube video, but I'm not at YouTube. I can embed my form. This is a great story called Yoko. And Yoko's a little kitty who has funny things in her lunch, and her friends are making fun of the sushi that's in her lunch. I can have students do this kind of like a digital listening center. They go to the computer. Maybe I have a little splitter and they can all listen together, or they can listen on their own. Maybe there's a little question. The question for kindergartner might be, did you like this book? Happy face emoji, sad face emoji. It doesn't have to be, or maybe what was your favorite part? It doesn't have to be recall questions or comprehension questions. Just, did you like it? Tell about a time when. So we can embed videos into our Google Forms too. I have a whole blog there, if you click on it, that has a step-by-step of how to do that. I know I'm not teaching you how to do much. I'm hopefully just sparking ideas of things you want to learn more about and seeing how this can be applied in the primary classroom. But that particular one, if you go there, there's a tutorial on exactly how to make this happen in your classroom. In my class, I had a book report form that kids did. Every time they read a book, they had to write the title, the author, the illustrator, draw a picture, tell your favorite part. I dittoed that thing. That's how long. I put it through a ditto machine. If you've been teaching for a while, you remember the purple ditto machines. I probably dittoed it 10,000 times in my career until we got the Chromebooks. And I realized, wow, they can just fill this out, because I'm not going to look at all those anyways. They're probably good. So they had some little bit of accountability with their reading. Okay, this is going to take me just a second, and you're going to say, Susan, you're crazy. I am not going to use spreadsheets with first graders. No way. That's like Excel, right? That's scary. What can first graders do with spreadsheets? So in this particular one, well, we have two here. One is we'd read the pigeon books. We know the pigeon books. And then we just took a vote. What was your favorite? And then over here, that was the same activity where they came up with their own question. Instead of collecting the data this time on a form, they just went and did it on paper. They put a paper on their desk. They said, what is your favorite pet? And he had the 3 choices: kitten, fish, puppy. And their friends went and wrote their answers. We counted them up. Using these templates, these are all yours. They'll force a copy open. It's yours. Enjoy. Using these templates, the kids were able to generate these bar graphs and pie charts just by typing in 3 numbers. If they can type 3 words and 3 numbers, your kids could do this too. 3 words and 3 numbers. They got that. The templates do all the work for you, but they can generate bar graphs on data they've collected. How cool is that? Spreadsheets seem scary, but you use Google Classroom to push out these templates. They just have to input the numbers, and they've got it. Again, 3 words, 3 numbers. There's Jorge's. Can your kids do that? Yeah, how cool. Google does the rest of the work. Ooh, I've got 14 minutes. Let's talk slides. Again, can't teach you how to do slides, but here's a bunch of resources. Those Coach Ben tutorials, if you've never seen Ben's tutorials, they're amazing because they show you exactly, go click here, go click here, go click here. Or if you want to do this, go click here. It's just little short itty bitty videos that show you the steps of how to do these things. So these are amazing tutorials. Save them, hold on to them. Because I mentioned Google Slides earlier for the vocabulary project. What about Google Slides just to draw some digital math things? Teaching them to click and drag a shape, teaching them to insert text. It's a great way to just label some shapes. We're learning the technology, we're also applying what we know. In this particular one, we learned about the spell checker because no one knew how to spell pentagon and no one knew how to spell trapezoid, and they learned that the little red squiggle meant that they needed to try again. 10 frames, there we go, we've got some 10 frames. If you click on this, it'll open a copy for you, it's yours, push it out in your own Google Classroom. And just how many more to make a 10? This is by Melissa Oliver. You guys know her. She's from this area. And I love this one because it takes that idea of the 10 frames, but it goes to place value with bigger numbers. It's an amazing one. I love sharing. All right. So let's talk about slides and writing. So Emily was a second grader, and we were doing narrative writing. And Emily started a story that was beginning, middle, end. There were some kids at school. They had a food fight. They got in trouble. That was the story in the beginning. And over the course of 3 weeks, we took Google Slides, we smashed in some images from Storyboard That. And this is what Emily's beginning, middle, end started out. There were some kids, they had a food fight, they got in trouble. Let's read her text that she created with Google Slides. Emily, the second grader. There were once 4 teenagers that went to Fowler High School. The girl with the leather jacket is Ariana, the girl with the scarf is Emily, and the last girl is Marissa, and the boy is called Nate. She's trying to develop her characters here. She's a second grader. I'm pretty impressed with this. She wanted to set her setting. This is Fowler High School, where they go to school. Okay. Again, remember the start is 3 squares, beginning, middle, end. They were getting ready for a prank to do in the cafeteria. They couldn't wait for it to happen. Ooh, are you building some anticipation here? You want to know what's going to happen? I bet they're going to have a food fight. Then all of a sudden, Emily yelled, food fight, and everybody got tomatoes, cupcakes, eggs, pizza, and ice cream, and threw them everywhere. Emily didn't write this in one day. We expanded and expanded and expanded over about 3 weeks to get to here. Then 5 minutes later, they ended up in the principal's office. They were so scared, they thought they would not get caught. Once they got to the principal's office, the principal punished all 4 of them. They did not feel happy at all. The day after that, they had to clean up the stage, and they did not live happily ever after. But at the end of the day, they learned to not have a food fight again. That's some good narrative writing. We started with a beginning, a middle, and end. She sketched it out in 3 squares. And then we took a day and we said, let's tell more about your characters. And then we took a day and we said, let's tell more about your setting. Then we took a day and we expanded the problem. Then we had a mini lesson on narrative shifts. You'll notice a couple times in the story she said, as they walked down the hall later that day, the day after that. So we had a mini lesson about narrative shifts. I think we used Patricia Polacco and we pointed out a bunch of them. And I said, now I want you to go put some narrative shifts into your narratives, right? So they're able to continue building this. Again, that idea of revising and editing. How cool is it that she actually got to go apply it in her writing? Google Slides for narrative writing. Sometimes we think slides, they get pigeonholed into being the informational report you do at the end of something. But they can be part of the writing process. Here's another one. This was a first grader, Ashlyn, and she used slides to write a book. And she said, so here's her table of contents. This is my dog, Tiku. She is 2 years old. Tiku is a Great Dane. You can tell by the simple sentence structure, not an advanced writing example, but she's doing awesome. Tiku eats food and drinks water. She needs water all of the time. She eats 5 to 6 cups of dog food every day. I love to cuddle with my dog. My dog's name is Tiku. She wraps around me when she's giving me a hug. Tiku likes me and my grandma the most. She loves to play on pillows. I like to cuddle Tiku, and she is my best friend. What do you notice about this particular set of books? Is it pretty? I think it's really pretty. So oftentimes, we let kids just plop in text and words and pictures and colors and don't stop and teach them just a tiny bit about design, about filling the space, about using the same color, about contrast, about transparency. These first graders learned how to make a text box halfway transparent. Oh man, did their slides get better. Because I stopped for a minute and said, hey, let's look at this little tool here and do that. And so they really felt like honest to goodness publishers when they did this. They felt like they created something, they got to share it, they got to send it home, they got to send it to grandma. They became publishers. It's going to that last step of the writing process. If you read the standards all the way in kindergarten, it says use digital tools to produce and publish writing, including collaboration with peers. That's in kindergarten, with guidance and support from adults. Use digital tools to produce and publish writing. Wow, what can they do when we put it in their hands? We're going to go through one more thing, and I'll just skip a couple more. I mentioned Screencastify at the beginning. We talked about how they were creating readers, right? They created little things. On this particular page, I'll show you a sample of something. In the corner, there's a little tiny thing that says Kinder Book Samples. Kinder Book Samples. And if you open it, I'm giving you a present. You can find your way here. If not, I'll show you afterwards. To this set of readers. Simple sight word readers that my kindergarten team developed and said they would share. In the very bottom corners, it says kindergarten sight word books. And this is what they do. They push these out through classroom. The students open them up. They use that extension Screencastify, and I'll model it here if you're not familiar. It's a little button I have. And I can decide whether or not I want to be there.
3, 2, 1.
And now they're reading. What begins with R? I see my rake. I see my rabbit. I see my ring. They can turn through the pages and record themselves reading this text just with a click of a button. And what's amazing about this... And now they're reading. What begins... What's most amazing about this is this instantly, if it's set up correctly, where's that video? That you hit this little button, and they can share it to you in a second. If you have it set up, it's all tied to their drive. So things like that, smashing in what seems like really complex tools, but giving them access, they can create so many things. I'm going to just go through the last tool in about 2 minutes. Talking about drawings. Remember in the beginning I talked about Jared, and Jared had that beautiful bat where he labeled all the parts. I had never heard this thing, Google Drawings, and Jared taught me how to use it. In Google Drawings, they can create infographics, posters, graphic organizers. Remember, I learned from Jared, and kids could do all these basic, simple little tasks. But again, what are we giving them? The ability to insert text, find a cursor, save something, right? When they close it and it saves. And then, we can get even fancier. This particular one, we read that biography about Barack Obama, and we could have written a paragraph to summarize it. But what if instead of writing a paragraph to summarize our text about Barack Obama, we make a magazine cover? You can use templates like this in Google Draw, and this particular one, remember on the Time magazine, you click on it, it's going to tell you it's yours, you can make a copy. They insert the picture, and instead of saying, this text told me that Barack has 2 daughters named Sasha Malia, they put it as an article cover or an article title on the cover. Living in the White House with Sasha Malia. Life as the first African American president. They pulled out the key details from the text and inserted them there. Just a different way to show what they know. Simple tasks pushed out through Google Classroom using Google Drawings. We learned how to do it. We made self-portraits. They turned out super cute. And then we have all these drag and drop basic activities, ways for them to access tools. This is the most recent one. I just did this a couple days ago in first grade. And they took their little picture, and they were doing a whole unit of study about friendship. And they read several texts, and they were talking about ways they can be a good friend. So what he did is he took his picture, and he went and said, I can help people, I can share, I can be nice. So he went and gave 3 characteristics of a good friend using Google Drawings. All ties back to their learning, not computer time and learning time, it's learning with computers. These are my absolute favorite. They're so hideously ugly, but in the best way. Okay, so Nolan, we're going to have a conversation about color now because I can't read any of your writings. Great opportunity to do that. But they were able to, the task was find 5 facts and write 5 sentences about Abraham Lincoln. Did Nolan do that? For sure. He was able to accomplish the task there. Graphic organizers, there's so many more. As you go through, there's additional samples that I won't get through today, but what I hope you take from this is that the Google Suite, all of these Google apps are accessible to your little learners. You just have to give them a chance. And I showed all of them just now, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so much. Pick one. Pick one. Was there one idea that sparked in your mind? Go watch some of the tutorials, or maybe find a sentence, a session later. If you really thought the MyMaps thing was cool, find a session on maps. If you think drawings, oh man, we're going to start with drawings, find a session on drawings and become an expert. Our littlest learners can do so much. They can do so much. We just have to believe they can and put the tools in their hands.